Adrian N. Breitfelder, City Clerk, you are hereby directed to call a special session of the City Council to be held on Monday, December 16th, 2024, at 5:15 p.m. in the historic Federal Building for the purpose of conducting a work session on Greater Dubuque Development Corporation and retail strategies, findings, and recommendations.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to a special session of the Dubuque City Council for December 16th, 2024. As a reminder to viewers and listeners, due to the nature of tonight's meeting topic, public input is not accepted. However, you may contact the City Council directly from the city's webpage at www.cityofdubuque.org/council contacts. Attendance for the session is as follows. Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Council members Farber.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Resnick.
Here.
Roussel.
Here.
Sprank.
Here.
Wethel.
Here.
City Manager Van Milligan.
Here.
And City Attorney Brumwell.
Here.
Thank you. Our work session topic is Greater Dubuque Development Corporation Retail Strategies, Findings, and Recommendations. I will turn it over to Greater Dubuque Development Corporation President and CEO Rick Dickinson.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. My name is Rick Dickinson. I am the president of Greater Dubuque Development Corporation located at 900 Jackson Street. I reside at 205 Hill Street here in Dubuque. Happy holidays. Mayor Kavanaugh, ladies and gentlemen of the council, City Manager Mike Van Milligan, most excellent city staff. I'm here tonight for a work session to discuss with you expansion of retail in our market. And in particular, we're going to have a report from Michael Warsaw from Retail Strategies with a PowerPoint presentation. Then I'd like to have a little Q&A afterwards, and I'll be respectful of your time. But before I begin, let me just sort of set the case as to why we're here tonight and why Retail Strategies has been retained once again by Greater Dubuque Development Corporation to work in our community. First of all, what's the state of our economy right now? We do not have November's numbers yet on workforce, but we do have October's. And October was the 7th consecutive month where this county, the MSA of Dubuque County, exceeded 61,000 people working in our market. First time in history. And it's the first time where our average annual workforce number is in excess of 61,000. At the same time, out of nearly 99,000 human beings that reside in Dubuque County, there are only 416 that are currently receiving unemployment benefits. So without question, we are at full employment. Oftentimes people say, yeah, but what about everybody else? How do you compare to other communities? Well, we had the third highest job growth year over year, October 2024 versus October 2023. Yes, modest, nearly 1%, but Des Moines, Sioux City, Council Bluffs, Scott County, negative job growth. Negative job growth. The MSA of Dubuque County since 1990 has increased the number of folks working in our county by 36%. You compare that to the state of Iowa of 19%. You have outperformed our competition. You are a model for the rest of the state, and I commend you for that. However, it's a never-ending process. And if you recall, we had the Next Gen survey conducted about a year ago, and we've shared the results with the community, the mayor and council in previous meetings. You'll recall that healthcare was a critical component for quality of life in our community and an expectation of our citizens. Affordable home ownership and apartment availability, and you've addressed that by changing incentives provided by the City of Dubuque for developers, and we now have 2,400 units in some stage of development in our market. Congratulations. Great schools, quality education was a top 10. Fourth, low crime rate. Congratulations to the City of Dubuque and our excellent police force for among the lowest crime rates of any metro in the country. And then, variety of restaurants. And that's why we're here tonight. And in the top 10, it included shopping and commercial districts. In 2016, we decided that we had to do something differently about retail expansion in our market. Prior to that, Greater Dubuque Development had retained a firm called Buxton Group. did a great job. What they did was they put a mirror up to the community, and then they told you what they saw in that mirror. It was a breakdown of the psychographic analysis of the community, breaking tapestries of about 60 plus different segmentations to say, okay, how many people in this segment, how many people in that segment, and what do they buy, where do they live, how much money do they make? And they gave that information to us, but it was up to us then to market that to the retail and hospitality community, national chains. That was a challenge. We had some luck, but we didn't feel that it was enough. And so we retained this firm, Retail Strategies, I think it was 2017. And we've had significant luck. They too conducted a new tapestry analysis of our buying power in our community and the breakdown of our population. But they go another step, and they take that information that they collect with us. They take the information we have about retail, commercial sites available within our community, and then they reach out to those retailers and hospitality across the country, those that they know are looking for a market like our own, taking the data that's been collected and providing it to them to say, see, you need to take a look at Dubuque County. We had significant luck with them beginning in 2017, and then the pandemic hit in March of 2020. And we did not renew our contract in July of 2020 because no one was expanding retail, no one was expanding hospitality. But today's a new day. And beginning in July 1 of this year, we retained Retail Strategies to come back once again and do an analysis. And I'm here to tell you that our community has changed dramatically in the last 10 years based on the tapestry that exists today versus the tapestry that existed then. I'm going to turn this over to Michael Warsaw, who's our rep at Retail Strategies. He has a presentation to make. We'll be glad to answer any questions afterwards, and I have some follow-ups, especially on the details of those demographic changes that have occurred in the last 10 years in the greater Dubuque area. Michael, are you there?
I am here. Can everybody hear me okay?
We sure
Thank
can.
God you're here, Michael.
Not going to leave you hanging, Rick. Well, council, mayor, everybody else, I appreciate your time this evening. I appreciate you all giving me the opportunity to speak. As Rick put it, I think that one of the things that's really important here is that we've seen significant change, significant growth in the community over the past 10 years. And with that, really a change in the type of retail and the retailers themselves that we believe we can attract and approach. I do have a presentation today. I want to go through that with you all so that we can kind of highlight the community from a demographic layer, really explain to you all and explain to the viewers and everybody else out there kind of what Dubuque looks like to retailers. And I think that that's an important perspective to provide. It is certainly one that is not going to be out there in a book or a magazine or anything that we pass out that you would see on your day-to-day drive into work or hear or see anything. But it's one that we need to use to sell Dubuque to those retailers every single day. So as Rick put it, as Rick mentioned, my name is Michael Warsaw. I am the portfolio director for Retail Strategies. We are a full service recruitment and consulting firm based in Birmingham, Alabama. We work in approximately 38, I believe it's now actually 39 different states across the country, with a number of clients of all different sizes, shapes, all of them. We work with anybody that gives us the opportunity, and Dubuque has given us that opportunity. So thank you, Rick. Thank you, everybody else. I'm going to go ahead and dive in if everyone can see my screen. Let me get started. So really the way that our partnership works, just to give kind of a high level overview of the way that we operate and the way that we work. Again, I think Rick did a great job of doing so. But what we do is we take the data, we run the data, we do all of the analytics that a retailer would want to see. We put all of that together, and then we actually go and we operate, in essence, as the community's broker. So instead of being hamstrung to one or two properties like a normal broker would, we view it as an overarching partnership where we're able to now go and really sell the entire community to these retailers across the country and internationally as well. So what does that partnership look like? You know, I think it's important to always reflect on the fact that Dubuque and your residents and you all will remain the experts. We will never be the absolute true experts on Dubuque. What we aim to be is the experts on national retail real estate. Now, what that means is that in a partnership structure, we rely on the local side. We rely on your expertise for transactions, things that might be happening in the market that are not necessarily out there in the public sphere yet. Those are the tools and the little tidbits and the anecdotes, the things that really help us drive these deals home. Now, why does retail matter? This is always something that I get, and the reason I make sure to include this is because I think that 99% of communities across the country really view economic development as maybe falling into a couple of different silos. We typically get industrial, whether that's going to be bulk distribution, manufacturing, cross dock, whatever it might be, whatever type of industrial you want to talk about. That is generally speaking the number one path for economic development that we see. Number two would be biotech and kind of in that medical sphere. And number three is going to be tech itself. Now, the reason I say that is because I think it's important to go ahead and say there is a fourth form of economic development, and that is retail. Retail as a whole contributes approximately $3.9 trillion to the annual GDP. That is a sizable amount. But maybe more importantly than the actual dollar amount is the fact that retail as a sector employs approximately 52 million people in the United States annually. That is a massive number. And it's one that reflects obviously at the national level, but also on the local side as well. You know, these are jobs now that are no longer paying minimum wage. They're jobs that are competitive, that pay well, that have good benefits, and bring home dollars. They bring home the ability to provide for a family. So what you're going to see on the screen in front of you is really what we call our retail ladder. The reason that this is important is one of the pieces of our process is really to identify, you know, how many pieces of each rung of these ladder does a community really check today? And what is that top rung of the ladder that we are trying to reach? Now, obviously, Dubuque as a market has a number of these brands already. One of the things that we want to do is obviously try and fill in each rung of this ladder as best as we can. You know, what I would say, and again, getting back onto that economic development topic, is really to focus on that middle section over there, the jobs. You know, I think that this is a number that typically surprises a lot of people. You know, when we look at Chick-fil-A, for example, Chick-fil-A sits right there in the middle of that ladder. 30 jobs would actually be a low employment number for a Chick-fil-A. Their average numbers are growing pretty rapidly at this point. Those are jobs, though, again, at Chick-fil-A that are paying well. They're well into the teens in some markets and some places in the country. They're paying into the $20 an hour range. There are other brands that pay absolutely just as well as they do. So again, it's important to understand that economic development and retail absolutely go hand in hand. The other piece of this that I would say, and the other reason that we do what we do, is to provide obviously a piece of the community that the community feels is missing. Retail is oftentimes, it goes hand in hand with really where you want to see your community long term. It goes hand in hand with recruitment for the other jobs that I know everyone is trying to fill. You know, obviously, as Rick said, your employment numbers are fantastic. We're extremely excited to see that. That absolutely affects the retailers and their ability to perform. But the other piece is that as you look to continue to grow high dollar, high wage jobs in the community, one of the things that you're going to have to do is obviously bring people in from outside of Dubuque, the not necessarily naturally or homegrown employment. You're going to bring these people to the community. One of the things that means is they are absolutely going to be judging Dubuque against wherever they're coming from or wherever they've been. And one of the pieces of that is always going to be the retail. It is absolutely essential that we provide retail that fits the community and fits those jobs and fits really the population that we're trying to attract, as well as the population that we have in place currently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive in a little bit into the data as a whole. This is the portion that I will remind everyone to drink your coffee, If you are not a numbers person, I apologize. We're going to talk about some numbers. So again, what we're going to really dive into here is going to be demographic overview, mobile data collection, the customized trade area analysis, lifestyle segmentation, and the peer analysis as a whole. So one of the things that we always do is we look at a market in two different lenses. One is, how do you see it? Well, Dubuque is a roughly population of just under 60,000 people. It obviously, the gem of the Mississippi there, a beautiful community. I had the chance to visit this summer, absolutely loved it. And that's great. But what we have to do is we have to break it down. We have to look at it like a retailer would. So what we've done here is we've dropped a pin on the map over at the power center there on the northwestern side of the city. And what we've done and what you'll see is we're looking now well beyond the boundaries of the city. We're looking at a drive time, which is going to be reflected in that green squiggly line that you're seeing, as well as radial rings, which are going to be that orange. The other colors on this map that you're going to see reflect your incomes. Retailers are not really motivated by city boundaries. They're not motivated by county boundaries. What they're motivated by is access to consumers. What that means is that although city boundaries are important, although city boundaries absolutely affect taxes and things like that, retailers really, they don't care. And I hate to be blunt, but it's true. They really do look at just their access to consumers. That means that they are looking across all different areas. They're looking across all different markets. And all they really are looking at is how can they attract high dollar, high consumer dollars into their business. So what we've done is we've broken out, again, kind of the demographics that retailers are going to see, what they're going to look at when they look at the market. What that means is we're looking at a 3 mile, a 5 mile, a 5 minute, and a 10-minute drive time. Now, I will say that these drive times certainly change based on the retailer themselves. Grocers tend to obviously look closer to home, while other more destination retailers can stretch those numbers up to 2 hours sometimes. IKEA, I think, is one of those that stretches theirs beyond 2 hours even for the drive times. But what we've done here and what you'll notice is that we have now grown those numbers, and we're really reflecting a broader community that I think is really important and shows the access to that retail that we're seeing. So within a 10-minute drive time of that site, we're looking at 18,000 households. We're looking at an average home value of $263,000. Population growth, which we'll dive into a little bit further. This is the projected population growth over the next 5 years. There is a decrease in that number. Again, we'll address that a little bit later. Average ages, current household median income though, strong number, 74,000. That's a really good number to be at. Again, what this is though, and why this is important, is this really reflects how a retailer is looking at your community. What we have to do, and what our objective is as recruiters, is to go out there and break all of this out. Basically, to say to the retailers, hey, this is great. We understand your data. We understand how you pull your data. But what we're looking at is an actual CTA. Now, what that means is that's a customized trade area. The way that we do that is we use mobile data tracking. You all, I'm sure, are familiar with this. For the broader audience, what this means is when you download an app onto your iPhone or Android, and you happen to click that accept button, and you don't really read those terms of use or anything like that, well, this is what they're doing with it. They're taking all of that data across the entire country. They're bundling that up, and they're basically using the information, selling it then to retailers, to all kinds of different users. But one of the tools that we use is we use that mobile data to understand where people are coming from, where they're shopping. So what you're looking at right now is the Menards over on the southwestern side of the city. You're going to notice the different colors and different shades here. What I'll tell you is the purples, pinks, kind of those darker shades represent approximately 70%, give or take, of the visitors to that Menards. The white area there represents the additional 30%. Now that 30% can come from anywhere in the US. There are probably visitors from 150 miles away that are coming in, but they're only reflected as one visit annually. What we're after and what retailers are after are those 70%. That makes up the majority of the shoppers. That's what they want access to, and that's certainly what we want to sell. So what that means is that we then tabulate a number of your major national retailers in the community, and we come up with what we call a customized trade area. This is going to be, again, another tool that retailers use. But what it does is it really highlights and captures the actual dollars that are being spent in the community. So what we've done here is we've now expanded, obviously, the boundaries of the community. We've pushed those now into 3 different states. We've gone into multiple different counties. And what we're doing is we're capturing the regional draw of the community. And I think that that's really important to understand, that when we look at Dubuque, Dubuque as a whole is a hub for the entire region. You're pulling in dollars, i.e. consumers, from all over the area. So what does that look like? Why is that important? Well, what we've done is we've grown the population that's accessible to these retailers. We've pushed your numbers from, give or take, 60,000 up to approximately 107,000. Now, again, there is obviously some projected loss in population over the next 5 years. That's something that I know everybody locally is aiming to correct, something that certainly is being corrected. Again, as we look at the 10-year, the trailing 10, we know that that is being corrected. So that is, again, very strong. We're really happy with that. Your household incomes across that CTA line up perfectly with the U.S. median average. That is really strong. The majority of communities, especially regionally, fall short of that. So we are very happy to see those numbers in line with that. Your average age is, it trends a little bit higher, probably not a surprise based on all of the other research and demographics I know you all have access to. That is, again, though, going to be looking at the entire CTA. And I should say the rest of this section that we're going to talk about really is looking at that whole CTA versus the local side. So keep that in mind. We're talking about a lot of outlying communities here as well. Now, looking at the racial breakdown of that CTA, probably some room for diversification. Obviously, majority white. That's going to be 92% of the racial makeup of that CTA is going to be majority white. I would say that the reason that we highlight this slide, and the reason that I want to mention this slide, is that retailers absolutely look for diversity in communities. It is extremely important to them and their and the way that they run their numbers. You know, a diverse community spends money on different things, spends money in different ways, and allows retailers to sell a broad, very broad range of items. So it's important to retailers. Again, probably some room for a little bit of diversification in the community. But moving along, what I wanted to highlight here, and I think that this is, again, a telling piece of the overall puzzle, we're looking at the number of households here. Again, that median household income, very strong. But what's really makes me happy, and what I think is what will make all of you happy as well, is looking at the 3-person and 4-person households across that CTA. We're seeing really good numbers there. That means that we've got a lot of families. It means that we have growth in the families. Those are all very, very strong indicators for a retailer. One of the things that they look for is home ownership and families. They want people that own homes. They want people that have families. Whether they own or not, they really do look for families. Obviously, it's dependent upon the retailer themselves. Some retailers, you know, that's not as necessary to them. But across the broader scope of things in the retail world, I would say families are a very strong piece of that puzzle. Now, one thing that I know Rick already talked about was the housing units. Sounds like you have 2,400 units under development. That is fantastic. What I am going to highlight here is, again, the fact that we have a majority owner occupied. That is a strong stat and one that is really good. Now, what I would say is, looking across this page right here, you're going to notice very few vacancies. Now, that is not a reflection of there being 2,700 units sitting in downtown Dubuque that are currently available. That just means that there are 2,700 units within that CTA that are not occupied. Those could be homes that are no longer livable. They could be homes that are in transition. They could be rentals. It could be anything. But what I would say is that vacancy rate is really good. We want to obviously keep vacancy low to a degree, but we also need to have a supply of units, whether they're rental or for sale, that are accessible to the broader community that we're trying to recruit, obviously in an effort to reverse some of those population changes that we talked about earlier. Your average housing unit value of $262,000 versus that United States average, I would tell you to actually be very proud of this number. What that means is you have an affordable supply of homes. This number across the US is absolutely driven by a couple of very, very, very strong markets. I'm looking at California, Texas, New York, kind of Boston, the Northeast, but also into Florida as well. They artificially inflate the majority of home values across the United States because of those $100 billion homes that you see being sold in the greater Los Angeles area. So again, your numbers are very strong. Keep that in mind. That's a healthy number to be at, and one that allows for that family growth as well. Now, looking at the family side of things, this is going to be the households by type. Again, very strong numbers on the family side of things. We're looking at 27,000 family households across that CTA. Strong numbers. We are still slightly below the US average, but we're ticking up enough here that this argument really becomes null. It's one that I would say is a strong number here when we're looking at those family numbers. Now, again, as Rick kind of mentioned, your unemployment is staggeringly low. Congratulations. Your daytime population across that CTA is extremely strong. Again, what that says is you are a regional player and a regional draw for jobs as well as retail. What we're seeing is obviously 47% employment outside of all of those other categories right there. But really, again, 1% unemployment or wherever that number lies on a day-to-day basis. I know your jobs report was just released, but your unemployment numbers very strong. Now, looking at the average employee salary, I would say there's room for growth in this category across the CTA. Dubuque itself actually has very good average employee salary numbers across the entire CTA. We do have some room for growth there. When we look at the 50,000 versus 59,000, we're close, but again, definitely some room for growth in that category. Now we're going to move into, Rick actually mentioned it a little bit as well, but what we're going to move into here are called our lifestyle reports. This is a tapestry segmentation. And really what we're looking at right now is what's called psychographic analysis of the community. Now, psychographics are the other side of the coin when we look at demographics. Demographics are who you are, racial breakdown, your age, gender, things like that. Psychographics, though, breaks that down another level, and it really takes into account your educational attainment, your incomes, kind of the non-tangibles about who you are, so that retailers can understand really who the consumer is at a deeper level. Again, this is the other side of that coin from demographics, but it is equally important to demographics for retailers. So again, there are 67 tapestry segments across the entirety of the US. Every single community is broken down into these categories. This is all, again, accessible via Esri and a couple of other metric tools that we use. But what's important is highlighting the largest 3 or 4 categories that we see in a community. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break down it's a 10-year picture of the community. So we're going to first look at the tapestry segmentation for 2014, which is going to be the top 3 categories from that year that were run. I will tell you ahead of time, I did not pick the names, so don't shoot the messenger, but they are Salt of the Earth, Midlife Junction, and Green Acres. Again, these are the largest 3 categories of the community that were run in 2014. So what does that mean? That is going to look like this. We're looking at Green Acres is going to be approximately 2.7 people per household with a median age of 43.9, call it 44. Household incomes are going to be strong there. Salt of the Earth is going to trend a little bit higher on age with an average household size of 2.59 and a median household income of 56,000. So a little bit more moderate. Now, what I want to highlight and what I think is really important here is that you've actually grown in the 10 years since this was originally run, and you're now looking at 4 major profiles. So those are going to be old and newcomers, in style, Rust Belt traditions, and again, Green Acres. Now, what's interesting to me, and interesting in looking at this across the 10-year span that we're talking about, is that only one of those categories remains. We've only kept one, And I will tell you, it is probably, looking at psychographics all day like we do, it's probably the one that you wanted to keep, which is Green Acres. The reason I say that is because that's going to be, again, it's going to be your higher income. 44 is, again, that median age, but we're looking at a $76,000 median household income. Very healthy numbers. The other one to really keep an eye on that is a very strong addition to the mix here, one that was not in that 2014 data run, is the addition of In Style. Now, In Style is going to trend a little bit younger with a median age of 42, smaller household size at 2.35, but an equally strong median household income of approximately 73,000. Now, again, the reason that this matters, the reason that this is important is because while I will say that the average broker, the average landlord, the average practitioner of commercial real estate is not necessarily paying attention to this every day, there is one category of people who are, and that is the retailers themselves. The decision makers and their analytics teams are absolutely paying attention to the tapestry segmentations. I have a background as a broker for a number of years. I can tell you that particularly in the food category, this is one of the most important pieces of the information that is run. What this really means is that when we have a location and a site identified, all of our demographics can check the boxes. Everything can line up exactly where you want it to be. But if that psychographic analysis comes back and we believe that our ticket price, i.e. the price for the hamburger at the restaurant, is too high, it can kill a deal. It can absolutely bring that deal crashing back down to earth. So having strong tapestry segmentation, having access to these tapestry segmentations and being able to speak about those is extremely important for the retailers themselves. Again, I will tell you, you're probably never going to have somebody ask you what the tapestry segmentations are for Dubuque, but it's good to have in your back pocket, especially if you're talking with prospects, especially high dollar prospects. This is an area that they really care about. So I think it's important to really talk about how do we do what we do and what makes us different. Retail strategies, like Rick said, we run all of the data. We operate off of a data-driven model. However, really what makes us different is our ability to connect sites and owners with the actual retailers themselves. So looking at that, again, these are probably terms that you all are very familiar with. I feel like I don't have to tell you all exactly what I'm talking about here, but certainly for the broader viewership and everybody else tuned in, what we do is we really connect the owners of properties, their brokers, landlords, etc., with the actual retailers themselves. Now, retailers can look very different. There are some that are franchise driven, that have local ownership, some that have franchises that operate 1,000 units. But really what we operate under is we operate under a very corporate structure, connecting corporate real estate groups or corporate retailers with the sites that they need to be at. So what does that timeline look like? This is a question that I get sometimes when we're wrapping up year one and people say, Michael, where is our newest Menards? Where's our newest Home Depot? Where's Lowe's? Well, what I always want to reiterate and always want to really the message that I want to deliver on timelines and what's really important is to kind of run through how a retail deal comes to fruition. They certainly take time, just like every other category of commercial real estate. I will tell you, if you have bought a home recently versus if you have done a commercial lease recently, I can tell you absolutely with certainty which deal was harder to do and which one took more time. Commercial real estate moves at a snail's pace compared to residential and really any other category of business. Commercial real estate folks are inherently slow, and I apologize for my entire industry. We are slow. Now, the reason that is the case is because commercial real estate and retail in particular is driven by shareholders. Shareholders demand returns. How do we do that in the retail world, or how we do that in the retail world is through growth. There's the age-old adage that if you're not growing, you're dying. And that in retail really is the mantra that the majority of retailers operate off of. What that means is that they have to open new stores. By doing that, they can reduce their overall margin growth, and they can continue to push and push and push. So for example, Dollar General will open 1,500 new stores in the next year, give or take. That is generally their target. How do they do that? Their timeline, et cetera, really plays out over the next portion of this slide that you're looking at. So again, investors demand returns. Wall Street and their private equity partners will set basically the guidelines for their expected returns. The real estate directors and the real estate departments are then given orders. They're given the number of stores that they need to open based on the expected returns. All in all, to cut to the chase, all in all, this process can easily take 3 years or more, given the investment type, the investment amount. The larger the project, the more time it's going to take. The larger the project, the more research it's going to take on the front end. It's why retailers are notoriously difficult. It's why retail real estate is notoriously difficult. And it's why I would tell you that if you've ever worked on any of these deals, you'll be shocked, or you probably were shocked when you heard the timelines for some of these contracts. It is absolutely, without question, completely normal to see timelines on these contracts of a year or more. So again, retail takes time. It's part of what we do is we operate as expediters. We try and push these deals through so that we're running through the initial 50% of this process a little bit faster than they would have done so normally. And we're pushing the market out there in a way that really prevents them from having to stumble upon Dubuque. We want to make sure that it is front and center, top of mind every single day for these retailers. So what are those retail categories? Obviously, the community has spoken, and the community has said restaurants are a big key factor for them and what they want to see. What I would tell you is that the data proves the exact same thing. The community is 100% correct. You need restaurants. You need sit-down restaurants in particular. Now, one thing I will say when we look at these, I'm gonna show you some examples of what those retailers might be, who we believe would be a good fit, kind of the types of retail that you can keep in mind. One thing I want to say though is that this is absolutely not intended to replace or compete with any local brands. And that is always a question that I get is how do we prevent that? One thing I would say is that your average strip center restaurant is really not going to compete with your downtown high-end boutique kind of restaurants that I know Dubuque has because I've seen them, I've been there. You have an incredible restaurant scene. And I certainly want to make sure you understand on the front end that bringing in a new brand that is going to be on the outskirts of town, more catered to your retail traffic, your day-to-day retail traffic, is really not going to compete with those locals. And that's really important for everybody. The other category that we're going to look at is quick service restaurants. Now, I would say we call it quick service. The brands that we're going to talk about are probably more on the limited service category, which is a new breakout of the quick service concepts. And then last but not least is going to be general merchandise, which is, again, I'll show you some examples, but that's going to capture a much broader range of retail types. So looking at full service restaurant concepts that again, these are examples, but certainly ones who we think would be a good fit. We're talking about the Cracker Barrels, the Chili's of the world, the Longhorns, the Outbacks, those kind of retailers. There is an absolute gap in the market when it comes to those affordable, all-American, dining brands. That's a category that we believe we can be very successful in, and a category that we believe the community would embrace based on those gaps that we're seeing. What we want to do is we want to limit people leaving the market and spending their dollars in other places. We want to be able to capture those dollars and bring them back into Dubuque so that those dollars are being spent locally. Now, looking at the quick service, again, these are really limited service. You'll hear that term tossed around. That really is going to be representative of the Qdobas, the Kavas, the Chipotles of the world. But again, this is a category that we believe will be long-term, has a lot of success and a lot of opportunity in Dubuque. We're looking at Portillo's, Raising Cane's, Moe's Southwest, Panda, Qdoba, Mission Barbecue, and a number of other brands that fit within that category as well. Now, last but not least is going to be the general merchandise. These are, again, just representative of some of the brands that we believe would be a good fit. One of the things that I would say Dubuque actually has really strong holdings of right now and a good market share of is going to be clothing. While I know that I feel like every community that I work with feels that they lack clothing, I would say Dubuque actually has really good offerings when it comes to clothing. You also have good sporting goods. However, there is absolutely room for growth in sporting goods. That category in particular, when it comes to catering that category to your visitors and the people that are coming to the community, that's a category that I believe we could hit really strongly. And again, one that plays into the overall atmosphere, the overall, I hate to say it, the overall vibe of the community, and one that we believe would be very successful. So with that, I appreciate everyone's time. That summarizes and kind of hopefully gives you all a 10,000-foot view of the partnership, what we do, how we operate, and our goals going forward. I certainly would love to open it up for questions, but again, I appreciate everyone's time. Appreciate you taking the time out of your days to be here and to listen to me talk about numbers for a little while. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and stick with us. I just wanted to touch on a couple things before we break into Q&A. Just to update you on some numbers, we just received ACA numbers from the Census Bureau on median household income, and I'm pleased to share with you our goal of $76,000 median household income by 2027. We're just a stone's throw away from that. The new number is over 75,900 received just this week, and I'll get you the hard details on that later. So we're going to have to update that, Michael, and it's good news. Success has many parents. Failure is an orphan child. But let's talk about success. And what happened the last time we retained retail strategies? Now, this isn't just about retail strategies or Greater Dubuque Development contracting them. This is about all the pieces coming together. But these are chains that were not here, that were contacted by retail strategies at our first volley, and see if they're familiar to you. Chipotle's, Chick-fil-A, Popeyes, Five Guys, Harbor Freight, AutoZone, Ashley's, Vertical Jump Park, Francesca's. You know, and sometimes it doesn't work. Carter's, gone. Route 21, gone. But that's what happened last time. Connecting the dots, analyzing the community, connecting to the real estate community, knowing what the traffic counts are, what the demographics are, and the psychographic analysis. And I know we touched on it briefly, but there's a huge change occurring in Dubuque right under our nose. Yes, our population, though it's grown every year, as I said, outpacing Iowa nearly double, but it's a different demographic, and that's the difference. So when we say these things quickly, we like old and newcomers. What in the heck does that mean? Let me just read you a little summary here. Who are we, old and newcomers? This market features singles, lifestyles on a budget. The focus is more on convenience than consumerism, economy over acquisition. Old and newcomers is composed of neighborhoods in transition, populated by renters who are just beginning their careers or retiring. Some are still in college, some are taking adult education classes. They support charity causes and are environmentally conscious. Age is not always obvious from their choices. 14.4% of our population is that category. And it wasn't even in double figures 10 years ago. Another, in style. Who are we? In style, denizens embrace an urban lifestyle that includes support of the arts, travel, and extensive reading. They're connected and make full use of the advantages of mobile devices. That's obviously not me. Professional couples or single households without children, they have the time to focus on their homes and their interests. The population is slightly older and already planning for retirement, but that's 13.4%. It wasn't in double figures just 10 years ago. Another, Rust Belt traditions. Who are we? The backbone of the older industrial cities in the United States surrounding the Great Lakes. The Rust Belt traditions population are a mix of married coupled families and singles living in older developments of single-family homes. While varied, the workforce is primarily white-collar, with a higher concentration of skilled workers in manufacturing, retail, trade, and healthcare. Rust Belt traditions represents a large market of stable, hardworking consumers with modest incomes, but an average net worth of nearly $400,000. Family-oriented, they value time spent at home. Most have lived, worked, and played in the same area for most of their lives. And then we talked about Green Acres. That's the only segment that existed 10 years ago with double figures. It's jumped from 9% to 12.4%. And as Michael told you, that's the one you wanted to keep because they have buying power. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you might have for Michael or myself. And first of all, thank you to the mayor and council, to the citizens of Dubuque, because you've helped this happen. City of Dubuque budgets approximately $30,000 last year for this initiative. That covers about half of the cost. We greatly appreciate that, and we think the entire community will benefit from it. And my money's still on El Mays, Pepper Sprout, Copper Kettle, and Brazen, and we are not here to weaken any of those, but to bring more population to our community so on those special days they can go to those special restaurants and enjoy them just as we do. So any questions?
Thank you very much, Rick and Michael. This is fascinating to look at these numbers. Mr. Sprank, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rick and Michael, question, so looking back at that tapestry, it seems to be we are kind of more in the middle of the map. Is that a good place to be, or do we want to be going out a little bit farther? I don't know. That's why I'm just, don't know, some questions.
Well, it's a combination of things. We are who we are. So we have to understand what's the makeup and the tapestries of our population now, because that determines what retail and hospitality we're able to recruit. Retail is a very harsh business, and it's based on hard numbers. So let's say a site locator for a major chain, restaurant chain, goes to their boss and says, you know, I was contacted by Retail Strategies about a place called Dubuque. And I looked at the data, and I went to the town and I experienced it, and it was very special. And I know that it doesn't fit any of our criteria, any of the hard numbers, but I just got this feel in my gut that we should go there. And their boss would simply say, you're fired. Because the template is what they understand that works, and that's the only way that it works. So we need to understand status quo. What it's telling us, as our older population ages out, even though our population has not grown by leaps and bounds, not by the percentage we even want it to, it is transforming. And we're replacing the older population with a younger population that likes downtown rental apartments, not looking for a 2-acre yard or a starter castle. They're looking for a quality of life in a community and a live-work environment. And it's exactly what we're shooting for with the investments this council and the city have made. And as that grows, we will grow. We just need to make sure that they have the amenities they expect if they're staying here or if they're coming here for the first time. As I said, our homegrown restaurants are the best, absolute best. But when someone comes to our community for the first time and we give them a tour with one of our tour guides, they're looking for familiarity as well. What chains are here that were also where they came from? It tells them that this is a safe place for them as a consumer, that there are things that they're familiar with. And they'll learn about all the special things later, but familiarity is a strong recruiting tool for workforce.
I couldn't have said it any better.
All right, thank you, Michael. Ms. Farber, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. One is, I am a small restaurant owner, and I have been, actually in January, it will be 10 years for Magoo's to be open.
I didn't get into the best pizza.
There you go. But I wanted
You
to let
win.
you, so over the 10 years, however, we were, just to give you an example, one of the first fast casual restaurants in Dubuque, right? And one of the first food trucks in Dubuque. And now there are many more fast casual, many more food trucks, but we have sustained. And we feel that the more the merrier in many respects, and that there is diversity, and there is extreme local support for local restaurants also. So I am very enthusiastic about potentially next steps. I do have a question about the tapestry, though, on senior styles. Because it's my understanding that we have less than 20%, very close to 15 to 20% of senior citizens in Dubuque over 55. And I didn't see that singled out here for the retail and for the marketing and some of the data in order to basically address that audience as well. And I understand all the other analytics and all of the other approaches for population mix and future. But we still do have an enormous amount of retirees in Dubuque, and Iowa is listed as one of the top 5 states in the United States for retirees. So could you address that just a little bit for us?
Well, I'm living it soon. Michael, do you have any comment on that first?
Yeah, I would say that what we've seen is really a diversification in the overall tapestry. It's not necessarily that they're not represented, it's that really what has happened is that as we have introduced a newer, younger population, it has broadened the overall tapestry. So again, what I would say and what I think is really important to highlight is the fact that, especially within the tapestries that Dubuque is absolutely hitting home runs in right now, those top 4, they're still not, we're not talking about 25-year-olds. We really are still trending on the older side of things. But what has happened is it has been a diversification in the type of consumer that we're seeing. So again, higher incomes, higher educational attainment. It's a very different profile. Now, I will absolutely say that is reflected in there. However, there has been a younger population that is coming up that has definitely changed those numbers tremendously. So while the retired population, the older population is 100% still a part of that tapestry, and one that is absolutely going to be key to any retailer's success, we absolutely cannot ignore that. Any retailer who comes to Dubuque is going to have to figure out a method of tapping into that population, making sure that they are attractive to that population. However, they still need to have offerings that cater them that are catered to the overall community and to that future change that we're seeing in the community.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that this group is not lost in the analysis here, because it is a significant part of our population.
No question.
Yeah.
No question.
And a significant part of our consumer population as well. Some on fixed income, Social Security, some with they can chip in $60 million for medical schools. So it's a combination of things. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Resnick.
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to ask a question and talk about another side of retail. Today, retail is kind of the community meeting place. There's so much online shopping and isolation. And then these retail centers often are where people see strangers, see your neighbors down that you normally don't see. And so it's very important that retail's role in society has changed a bit, not just where you buy stuff, but where you meet people, you talk to, you're polite to people, you see how other people treat each other, and in so many ways. So I think that's another part. And you mentioned that when people come, they look for certain markers, like, they don't even have a McDonald's, that type of thing. But so retail transforms and defines communities a lot. And a lot of, we're trying to make our downtown a community, meeting area. But for other places, when you're not downtown, where do people meet each other? It's cities retail. So it's very important to a city, not just for economic development, but actually for, support each other and see each other. I remember that it used to be where you go out and I went shopping. Well, who'd you see? Because you would often see people that you knew, and then there would be a conversation, what's going on? You'd stop and talk with them. And I hope that continues. And I like how we're going and we're working with this. But it's not just economic development. It's really the health of the whole community. And I didn't know if you wanted to comment on that, or what your experience in building the retail helps build us as a community.
Well,
Go
ahead. Go, please, Michael. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, anecdotally, I am, I am not ashamed to say that I am from Alabama. I am an Alabama kid. And one of the things that certainly we humorously joke about down here is the fact that, we all know somebody whose first date in high school was a trip to Walmart. And it's not a joke. Walmart and now Target and all of these other retailers play an essential role in the social aspect of people's lives. Now on a more serious note, one of the things that I think is a key contributor to that social aspect of retail are your local coffee shops. They're the backbone, typically, of that social interaction. A lot of times they're the backbone of your tutoring industry. I will just tell you, I can't tell you how many times I go into a small town in rural, the most rural portions of the Midwest, and walk into the local coffee shop. Hopefully many of them have a Starbucks by now. But walk in there and see tutors and see high school kids, doing their homework and sitting there talking to each other and interacting with each other. I think for a long time, retail has brought people together in social situations, obviously at bars and restaurants and things like that. But I think that as America has shifted in the consumer and our type of consumerism, again, like you said, in online shopping, physical retail still holds an essential place in the way that we function societally. And it is extremely important that we maintain that. Again, what I would say is that the majority of that and what we see is certainly going to be coffee shops, restaurants, local bars, things like that. Those are absolutely still a key factor in that, but it is no replacement. And absolutely, we still see people that will meet up and go shopping together at the mall or things like that. That is still a piece of the American fabric and the retail fabric of our country, and it is one that I hope doesn't go away anytime soon. I am absolutely an advocate for in-person shopping. I understand and recognize a place for online shopping, but if I can point to one stat and one stat only, it's that 79% of people still choose and still want to physically touch and feel an item before they buy it. I would tell you, and I would ask, how many of you have bought a car without, the kicking the tires, shall we say? You don't make big purchases without physically touching and feeling and inspecting and trying out that purchase. And it's the same thing in day-to-day retail shopping. I think clothing is in particular the most important piece of that. People want to shop. People want to see it. They want to try it on. That is much, much more difficult to do when we're online shopping. It's possible. You can certainly order 5 dresses from Amazon and you can pick the one that fits the best or looks the best, but you still have to go return the others. And that is a process that I think the majority of people still choose not to participate in.
I would add that this information also tells us what we probably don't need more of or what the market wouldn't support. I mean, we all know that if you can't buy it at Tyson's, you really don't need it. And because of Tyson's and their competition, there really isn't room in our market for another farm store. If you look at Spawn and Rose, locally operated here, a longtime employer and retailer, combined with Lowe's and Menards, there probably will not be a Home Depot in this market for well over a decade because it's saturated. But everything else, it's about doing the doable, and that's what we're really going to focus on in the coming year and beyond. So, just wanted to share that.
So I think my question is related to your background at Retail Strategies, Michael. And I'm first of all really fascinated by psychographics. It's really an interesting topic. I feel like I could read about it for a while and learn a lot. It's exciting.
Happy to provide you with reading material.
Good. The question I have relates to, as we touched on, retail online and general merchandise specifically. You mentioned how we have room for growth, for instance, in sporting goods. So my question is, we have some of those retailers now. As far as your organization and as it relates to online shopping, do you ever capture data based on retail shopping done online to help target what our community needs? So for instance, how many people in our kind of MSA are doing online shopping at Scheels and or a like merchandise establishment? And does that predict for us somehow where we should focus our recruitment? Does that make sense?
It does. It's a fantastic question. I would tell you that typically the only real way to track that, and it is extremely difficult to do so, but the only real way to track that is actually purchasing credit card information, which can be done. However, it is extremely cost prohibitive, and it is a route in data research that typically the only ones who are doing that are the retailers themselves. And they run it through their proprietary algorithms really to crank out a list and basically to figure out kind of where they are drawing significant amounts of purchases from. Now, obviously, from a retail standpoint, the other side that they have access to that unfortunately we don't, and really no one does, is they have a record of every single delivery that they're making. They track that number as well. So really, there are two pieces of information that they use in a lot of their online versus brick and mortar decision making. It's going to come down to credit cards and basically the access to the data that they're purchasing from Visa, American Express, MasterCard, et cetera. And then the other one is going to be their actual shipping records that they're able to keep track of internally. Unfortunately, I would say that that is one piece of the overall data metric where we don't have a great answer currently. And I mean that across the entire industry. That is a very hard piece to track. What we are able to track is the overall consumer spending online versus brick and mortar. Those numbers we're able to track. However, getting very specific on a categorical basis is extremely difficult. And again, it's out there. It's a cost prohibitive data tool, though, unfortunately, right now. There are methods, and we believe that that information will become much more readily available, hopefully soon. But again, one thing that's always a balance in the industry and in the world of data and data analytics is where is that line in access to people's consumer information and their data tracking? That is a line that seems to shift all the time. I think that there is certainly probably a path towards some government intervention in some of that as well. So while we are tracking it and we're trying to keep an eye on kind of when that becomes much more readily available, I also can see some roadblocks to it really getting out there, which really just means that for the time being, unfortunately, that information is kept very close to the vest for retailers.
I should mention, too, that we are connecting Michael to a number of developers and property holders in our market, introducing him as someone, as a resource. And we maintain an inventory of those retail commercial properties on Location One information system on our site at no charge for the realtor or the property owner to try to connect the dots on that.
May I piggyback one more question on that then, Michael? So
Yeah,
in the scenario, for instance, as an example, Shields, if we were to recruit and actively pursue a retailer like that, one of the first things they do then is to run those kind of data numbers that you described on deliveries and on credit card use in the MSA?
Absolutely. So one of the first things that they're going to do now, we'll use Shields as an example because I think it is kind of the perfect example for this conversation. One of the things that they're going to do is they're going to look at a couple of things. They're going to look at the credit card statements. They're going to look at deliveries. They're going to look at the order history across the entirety of the country, kind of trying to identify and figure out where their orders are coming from. The other piece that they're going to look at is they're going to look at that mobile data tracking that I was talking about earlier. They're going to know exactly where their shoppers are coming from, and they're going to look for pockets where they feel that there is a density of those shoppers, i.e., if you are shopping at one particular store and there's a large number of people from Dubuque that are shopping at that store in another market, that's going to show up on somebody's radar at some point. What we want to do is we want to make sure that they are looking at that before it triggers the algorithm to send an email. We want to make sure that they're looking at that ahead of time. And really the reason that we do that is because of the fact that, when retailers are looking across the country, particularly national retailers, they're looking at 10,000, on average, 10,000 different markets that can work or are available to them. That can be obviously different cities, states, counties, whatever it might be. What we want to do is we want to make sure that that list absolutely includes Dubuque at the very top. And that really is the goal for us, is that we are eliminating the 9,999 other markets, and we're putting you all at the top of their list, or at least at the front of their mind. So again, what I would say is they have access to a number of other pieces of data and information that candidly just cost prohibitive across the operation that we have currently, but one that we certainly are investing in on a regular basis. We still spend approximately, I think we're at about $500,000 a year on data alone. So one where we still make a sizable investment, but certainly one that the retailers have an upper hand on that category, and having they have the actual data itself, the real data in real time.
And,
So,
sorry.
real quick, Katie, we're down to about probably 6 minutes left. I want to make sure that I ask a question, if that's okay. If
Please.
I hate to jump in,
Please.
because I want to make sure it's a question that's asked, and if it was yours, I apologize.
That's okay.
I've heard a lot about, how this is done and all those things. The one thing I want to make sure I know, though, is there anything we need to do as a city council that we aren't doing, especially? Anything that in particular that we need to be thinking about as we look into the next year? I appreciate GDDC doing a lot of this work, but I want to make sure that we know that before we walk away from this discussion today.
No, fantastic question. I appreciate that. I think that, Rick is an incredible partner on all sides of this. I know that Rick has regular conversations with everybody there. One of the things that I would say is important in every community is certainly the openness and willingness to work with developers, hearing them out, understanding their needs, understanding the process with which they operate under. We're in a time right now economically where things are moving in the right direction, but those numbers are still hard to achieve. It is still difficult to operate under the current rents that we're getting regionally and nationally. Cost of construction has finally hit a leveling out right now, but it is still elevated beyond what is supported in a lot of markets because of the rents. So what I would say is, anything that we can do as a community to make development not necessarily easy, but easy, anything that we can do to cut down on the lead times, cut down on times internally, permit processes, things like that, goes a long way with overall retail development. Retailers operate under, again, they're motivated by the number of deals that they can do in a year. We just want to make sure that those deals are done quickly and efficiently, and done as easily as possible. And I know that Rick, I'm sure, has more to add to that as well.
Ditto.
All right, perfect. So, Michael, do you have more?
No,
Okay, all right.
if that concludes the questions.
No, I'm going to go back to Ms. Wethel because I cut her off, so I'll let you finish up.
Perfect.
No, that's okay. You had touched on it for just briefly there. We keep a list of available properties that is public, that can be accessed by any real estate agent. They can also free of charge list properties there, so that if we have a retailer that is interested in our area, then it's ready to go. And I just want to make sure that people know that doesn't just happen. That happens because we have great partners like GDDC, who is acting very aggressively at this sort of, we're ready to tee it up when you're ready to give us a retailer.
Yes, that is in place. It's dependent upon the property owner or the realtor that has the listing to get the information to us so that we can put it on Location One information systems so that the developer or the retailer can have access to that information. And I do want to mention one other thing. When Michael said the words Cracker Barrel, Mike Van Milligan started to shake like a child waiting for the first gift under the tree. I mean, I'm just telling you. Any other questions?
We do know our city manager is a true road warrior. Yeah, Ms. Russell, I think I saw your hand, and then you'll have our last question for the work session.
I was just wondering, a lot of the demographics and the psychographics, they were a snapshot in time. And I'm just wondering if trends have any value in what the realtors are looking at, to see a community that's trending in a particular way, that may be positive.
I mean,
Do they look at that?
All this work that's been done in the last years, trying to create a community of choice, is the answer to that question, and anything that we can afford to do that is imperative to assure our success, whether it's in Dubuque or any other community in Dubuque County or anywhere in our region. Is it safe? Do you have quality health care? Do you have the amenities you want? Can you shop in your community? Is it dog friendly? Do I have hiking and biking trails? Is there outdoor recreational opportunities? Is there a sports complex facility? Things that we have and things that we're investigating. But moving forward constantly, because you'll never stay the same. After a presentation of our leadership group, one of the folks got back to me after the meeting and said, well, I don't want to do that because what if it puts so-and-so out of business? Well, what doesn't put so-and-so out of business is continued growth of your population so everyone is successful. And that's the goal here. No community stays the same. You either grow or you decline. And Dubuque and the greater Dubuque area has decided to grow.
All right. Well, Rick, thank you very much. Michael, thank you very much for joining us remotely. This has been very, very helpful information. I hope a lot of folks get a chance to read this and see it and digest it a little bit more because there's a whole lot here. But thank you very much, and thank you for this service. And then we'll get back. There's no more business in this work session, so we'll be back in about 3 minutes at 6:30 to start the regular meeting.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.